We're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the Suwannee County Board of County Commissioners meeting for January 4th, 2022. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Commissioner Hale to give the invocation and the pledge.
Please stand up for a minute. Bow your head. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to come together and do the work of Suwannee County and the people. Lord, we thank you for your forgiveness. We thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, Lord. Lord, we pray that you'll watch over us and guide us as we go through this 2022 year. And we pray, Lord, you'll be with Patrick Taylor and his family. Bless them, wrap your arms around them, protect them and guide them. All this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving along to the consent agenda, I need to pull item number 1. So, anybody else wishing to pull anything? Can I get a motion on items 2 and 3?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lynn, second by Commissioner Stapleton. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 1 is I need to recuse myself from voting on the processed invoices because the county got some field dirt from the nursery, which I'm a part owner in, and so I'm gonna just abstain from voting on that.
Just need a motion to approve?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hale, second by Commissioner Fleming. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you, gentlemen. At 5:05 or as soon thereafter as the board matter can be heard, we will hold a public hearing to discuss with possible board action adoption of ordinance amending Chapter 66, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinances of the Suwannee County Code of Ordinances relating to the use of roads and right-of-way, renumerating certain sections, creating a new section 66-37, dealing with aircraft's use of roads and right-of-way, providing severability, providing for inclusion in the Suwannee County Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicts, and providing effective dates. Mr. Pravat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but my watch says 5:02, so
I'm
if
sorry.
you have some other...
I got a little ahead of ourselves,
If
didn't
you have
we?
some other business to take care of, can we come back to that one?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, we only got a couple minutes here, but I think it would be a good time for all of us to express our thoughts and prayers for one of our own, and Mr. Taylor. Just really heartbreaking. Keep praying for some good news. Just always been a good person with the county, and anytime I've had something issue or a resident or constituent, just always been there to help. I'm sure the rest of you probably have some comments, and I would ask for you to make them at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Stapleton. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir, Mr. Fleming.
that's how quick things change, things happen. And our last meeting, that was anything of that sort when it's dealing with employees of the county, but just go to show how things change and how things happen. And I was saddened when I got the news and continued to get updates, and it really turns your stomach. But at the same time, it lets you know that, we got to stay prayerful. There's different levels of faith and of understanding, and I would always try to be understanding and have that thing of faith. I grew up like that, and as I get older, it gets stronger. I asked you and Commissioner Land, how's your dad? You told me great. When I asked you, you told me good news, that's good news. Anytime, but we can't leave God out because he's in control. Amen. And right now, Patrick family, not Patrick, but his family need our support from this board and prayers, and I can just imagine what they're dealing with. And the loss of my father, it was just tough and terrible. And it's a hard, very hard pill to swallow. You know, you can't talk. And then my brother, you know, lost him to cancer. He was at the age of 51, and 3 years ago, my sister retired, and 3 months later we were funeralizing her. 3 months retired, and it was a sudden thing, but it was a hurtful thing. But you know, I think about it, and that's what makes me a stronger person, and have a heart for the people and a love for the people, because of things I dealt with in my life. But we just pray for that family, that they receive strength, his children, and his got any grandkids and his siblings. It's a hard thing. So I remember he came out on my property about 2 years ago, and he did an inspection for me. And my mother, we had my mother. My mom was 85. She's in a wheelchair. And he said, "Oh, he's a nice gentleman." I said, "Yes, man, he worked for the county. He worked for it." And you know, I respect that so much. But now I told her that the gentleman that came out, think, you know, about the situation, but we have to pray one for another and lift each other up. And Mr. Chairman, thanks for this little moment here. And I just need all that, but just saying what from the heart.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lynn,
I mean, I echo what they said. I mean, I met Patrick probably 20 years ago, but 10 years ago I did owner builder on my house, and he was my inspector, and just super helpful, super good guy. As an owner builder, you know, just showed me he wasn't your typical inspector. That was my first experience. He was just trying to help me and get it done and get it right. And I pray for him. I pray for his family, and my heart breaks for him. But we're gonna keep praying.
absolutely.
Yep, I'll just add that Patrick and I were classmates years and years ago. Been knowing him probably my whole entire life, since I was 10, 11 years old. And just like Commissioner Land said, he's a heck of a guy. He knows his job very well. He was instrumental in helping me learn how to speak to the people when I would have, you know, calls on issues dealing with his department, and he would break it down to me so that you didn't make someone mad, that you got them the information they needed to navigate through what they had to do to get the permitting done and things like that. So he's just another one of those employees that we talked about up here that's just top notch, and you know, we need to, the whole community needs to pray for him, pray for his family, and we'll just continue doing that. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. I'll just echo the same thing, and just like all you fellas, he's inspected several things for me, and he was always super nice and super knowledgeable, and it is just heartbreaking, and I do pray for his family and his children, and just let God do his work.
Amen.
Yep.
Okay, can I go now, Mr. Pravat?
Yes, sir. I've got after 5:09.
Well, I'm not gonna read it again, so
All right.
item number 4, Mr. Pravat.
All right, thank you. To initiate the public hearing here, if anybody anticipates that they will have any comment or testimony regarding this particular proposed ordinance, would you stand to be sworn, please? Seeing none at this time, I'll proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, this, and board members, this was an item that was brought to our attention in the fall, if you'll recall, with regard to certain subdivisions that were enacted in the 70s, in which the public roads were dedicated within these subdivisions, even though they were designated as fly-in subdivisions with an attached airstrip to it. Back at that time, you all went ahead and directed us to try to come up with a solution for this, and this particular ordinance is our solution. First part of the ordinance will actually move back the penalty provisions, and that's what gets renumbered. But then we move into the ordinance provisions, which will be newly created section 66-37. You've seen the body of the ordinance as you have before you, and to go along with this would be the next thing, which would be the rules and regulations which are anticipated under section A1 of the particular ordinance. Basically, what it does is will designate certain roads in the county within these particular types of subdivisions. They'll have to come in and ask for it to be designated, and then, it'll still come back to the board, each time for consideration with this designation. The ordinance part just gives you the power to be able to go ahead and make that designation, and then we'll address the resolution. It's the second part under item number 5. I think Commissioner Land has spent a good deal of time communicating with the fly, I'm going to just call them generally fly-in folks down there, to be able to work through both the ordinance and the following resolution to try to come with this solution. So at this time, I'd like for you to simply address the particulars of the ordinance.
Thank you. Is there any questions of staff? Anybody? I'll now open the floor to public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? No, I'll close public comment. Is there any discussion? Or do I have a motion?
I just, if you don't mind, ask Commissioner Lamb, I think you said you had a lot of contact with them. Good conversations, everybody's on board with it. And
Yes, sir, Mr. Pravat's been super duper helpful. And I've got quite an education on roads and right-of-ways and airplanes, but, this ain't the only community, I don't think, in the county. This just has been the one that's been on the forefront, as of late. And both parties, everyone down there, several parties have seen this final resolution, are happy with it. As we talked about in that one meeting, September, I believe it was, Mr. Pravat.
Yes, sir.
The problem is the county accepted the roads back in 1979, and it's an airstrip, it's an airport community. Well, there's lots with hangars on them right now. On the opposite side of the road is a strip, and by Florida statute, no airplanes are allowed to taxi or move across the county-owned or government-owned road. So there's been an issue there for quite some time, and these folks have been doing it and trying to put this to bed.
Really?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Floyd.
You said, Commissioner Land, you said there's lights out there now? Are they utilizing those lights now?
Lots.
Oh, the lots.
Lots that are opposite of the actual strip, so they can't, without crossing the road, the airplane can't get to the airstrip. So it's affecting their property values and everything else. So, to make it whole, palatable, yeah, we just need to address it and put it to bed. Hopefully.
Is there anything further?
that's right, looking for a motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hale, second by Commissioner Land. All in favor? All opposed? Same sign. Motion carries 5-0. I'll now close the public hearing on the ordinance. Moving along to item 5. At 5:05 or soon thereafter, to hold a public hearing to discuss possible board action adoption of a resolution establishing criteria for designation of public roads for aircraft use, creation of an application and setting fees for designation of a public road for aircraft use. Mr. Pravat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, anybody that may be interested in the second part of this, would you stand to be sworn? Again, seeing Mr. Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, sir.
Now, this is the second half that I just mentioned briefly a while ago about the resolution that was set the rules for being able to designate a road as for aircraft use. It also sets other requirements for when you're actually on the road and what you have to have to go along, the pathway along there. We tried to consult with the folks down there and consult with other folks that have private air communities that do comply, to try to find some of the rules and regulations that they also have within those typical fly-in communities to be able to, bring them forward for us. In addition, we added some additional insurance requirements in there to protect the county, which they will have to have on their person anytime that they are operating the airplane. So you can see there's 3 different sections there that, one, what roads are eligible, then second, the application process that you have to go through to have one designated, including doing the application and paying the appropriate fee, then coming back before y'all for approval of that, and then finally, category of what you must be doing while you are utilizing the road, going from there. This resolution, like I said, it is designated in the ordinance, and these will be the rules that will flow from the ordinance. And therefore, if you violate any of these particular rules in the use of the thing, you'd be subject to the provisions of section 38, 66-38 and 66-39 for appropriate penalties.
Thank you. Is there any questions of staff by the board on this item? If not, I'll open the floor to public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
Nobody wants to speak after that explanation?
There's a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have a comment, you need to come to the podium, please, ma'am, and state your name and address for the record. When you reach the podium, would you please raise your right hand? Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll give before the board this evening will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Judy Bowser, and my address is 19614 161st Court in O'Brien, Florida.
Thank you, ma'am.
I just had a question as to, you said the penalties and you explained what the numbers were, but could you just briefly tell us what that was about?
Well, if you get an airplane and you start to go out on the road, the sheriff's going to go out there and wrestle you down and pull you out of the airplane, drag you off, and then get back to your hand. Okay, actually, the section under Chapter 66 deals with the use of roads and use of roads within the county and the typical penalties for fines that go along with it. Section 66 would be like things that if you park vehicles along the side of the road for an extended period of time, you're subject to getting a ticket. And or if you continually be able to do it, then you have you can be subject to an injunction or subject to the fine for the ticket and stuff. The initial penalties under Chapter 66 for first violation of any of those particular rules is $100, and it progresses up through the 4th fine, and then at the end of the 4th fine, you will be prohibited from doing that anymore. It's just typical sections. You don't include it in this ordinance because it's already included in our ordinance. That's why you make the reference in this ordinance to that number. So if you can go there and look at those particular provisions for the fines, they just match up.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Not, I'll now close public comment. Is there any board discussion? Do I have a motion to adopt resolution?
No questions, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Land, second by Commissioner Fleming. All in favor, aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Pratt.
At this time, is there any commissioner items not on the agenda? Don't wish to bring it up. General business, we got some additional agenda items. Item number 1, approve of release of satisfaction of lien with Leanne Cannon, State Housing Initiatives Partnership Client. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve. A second.
Motion by Commissioner Land, second by Commissioner Hale. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 2, discuss with possible board action 164th Street Bridge. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the county's been dealing with this bridge for many, many years. It's an old bridge, I believe, constructed in 1940. It needs to be replaced. DOT knows that it needs to be replaced. They inspect it every 6 months. Every 6 months they have an engineering firm that does this type of work for DOT. At one time they inspected once a year, but now they're inspecting every 6 months. Over the years, I've met with lots of DOT representatives out there on the bridge. It's a bridge that has very low daily vehicle trips. One big issue with this particular bridge is that it was declared historic by someone that doesn't live in this county. And DOT hasn't ever been able to tell me exactly who that was that declared it historic. But when they did that, it made it incredibly cumbersome to even replace the bridge. So many years ago, I spoke to DOT representatives about getting this bridge on a list with DOT for replacement. Now, the only problem with it is that we are competing with about 3,000 other bridges across the state of Florida who have, in most cases, much higher traffic counts, daily vehicle trips. This one has a very low number. It's on an unpaved road. A few years back, we talked to DOT about trying to perform some type of Band-Aid work on this thing, some interim repairs, in hopes that it would satisfy the need for a period of time, but it's been impossible to do much in the way of repairs out there. You've got some information from that report that talks about the structural deficiencies that it has. Physically, it's one of these, looks like large culverts, half of a culvert, pieces, sections bolted together, and then field stone around the arches. And it's nearly impossible to repair. When some of you may remember a number of years back on 180th, there's a similar bridge. After Tropical Storm Debbie, the inspection report called out and emphasized some of the deficiencies on that roadway, which has a much higher traffic count. We had to shut that road down at the time. We didn't have the money to perform the interim repairs, so DOT, we made an appeal to them, and they gave us additional funding as a part of the paving project to go ahead and bid and contract those interim repairs out, which were done. And with the understanding that the bridge was going to be replaced, so now it's programmed in to be replaced. I think it's about a $4 million project. Well, this bridge is almost the same bridge, just in a different location on an unpaved road. We don't have the $4 million to replace it, and we don't have the projected $1 million in this particular case with inflation that had been estimated by the engineer, Mr. Pittman, who's taking a close look at this thing as well, to go and do the interim repairs. In this particular case, there is an alternative route there's a short unpaved road on the east side of the bridge that connects back to 252. So the people that would otherwise use this bridge coming off of 49 could use 252 to get in and out of their properties in that area. We have done postings of weight limitations in the past. Those are in the report by the engineers. But the continued decay of the bridge is what's problematic. And my concern is the liability that we have, because we can't afford to replace the bridge, and we can't really afford to even perform the interim repairs. And we're at a stage where we need to consider potentially just shutting that bridge down and making an additional appeal to DOT to try to get the funding that would be required in order to replace it. I've spoken to them recently, it's still on the list. Mr. Pittman has spoken to them. So they know. In fact, I don't know, probably Commissioner Fleming's the only one here that might remember Mr. Green, that used to be the representative from DOT that would come over here and meet with us. This goes all the way back to those days. I met him out there. He brought 2 engineers over that had worked on the bridge in St. Augustine. They had all the experience with these historical bridges. And, I've discussed lifting the historic designation. That can be done, and a number of other things. So we've got a bridge that isn't really safe, that probably should be shut down, and us continue to make our appeal to DOT for funding. But I'm out of options with this thing, and I just needed to bring it to the board because this most recent engineering report that they sent, they're asking us to acknowledge that we've gotten this report. Well, we've always acknowledged that, but my concern is the liability associated with this thing in its current state. So I'm asking the board to participate and decide what you want to do with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, respectfully.
I was looking over this report, Mr. Harris, and I see most of these items where they documented, if I'm reading this correctly, it's no change, and that means no change from the previous time they inspected it, as far as any additional.
That's essentially true. If the water wasn't under there, we could go walk under it. I mean, I've been under it when there was no water, and you can see the corrosion on the corrugated metal portion of it, and it's got materials that are now coming through that, whatever they used to backfill it at the time. So I don't know, they're indicating it hasn't gotten any worse. I think in their inspections, they can push through that metal with a rod or something. So I don't know that there's a substantive change since the 6 months prior that he had inspected it.
Could you sleeve those culverts?
I don't know. When they did the repairs on, an outstanding question, let me say this. There's another outstanding question about the historic designation on that and what can actually be done in the way of interim repairs. With the historic designation, the idea is that all of that fieldstone is going to be retained and it's going to continue to look just like that when the reconstruction occurs. So I can't answer the question about sleeving the entire thing. I know on 180 they went in there with sections and they bolted some of that back together. Now it's a big undertaking because they've got to de-water it and they've got lots of issues to deal with in order to accomplish that. So they did some interim repairs on 180th.
Yeah, I looked at it when they done it.
I think the number at the time was about $400,000 back then.
Well, my only question, I get it, nobody it was aggravating when they closed the bridge on 180th Street, we had to go around, so I know how aggravating that is. And, I'm just thinking, just what comes to mind to me is, number one, can we sleeve it if we could and get away with it for a while? Could we do that? If that's not possible, at some point, will they make us shut that bridge, or is it just up to the county to come up with that determination?
I think ultimately they'll tell us we're gonna need to shut it down. And I'm not as concerned with when that day may come as I am the liability of the bridge and all these reports that occur every 6 months. My concern is that if it were to just fall in with someone on it, then it would be a major liability to us. Now, is that gonna happen? I don't have a clue.
Well, I understand those things, and I mean, I'll tell you my position. My position is I'm not voting to shut that bridge down. It's a historical bridge. It's been there since before World War II. Does it need work? Yes. And if it's on the historical register, then why aren't we getting a little bit more leeway on, and some support from DOT? I thought when you're on those type things, whether it's state or federal, that puts you on up the list. But I'm just asking that question.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer to it. What I do know is that the list that it's on probably is not limited to those with historic designations, but rather the general statewide need for bridge repairs. And I know that we're competing with lots of other bridges.
I want to be safe. And if we have the proper signage out there for the weight limits, I mean, I'd like to make sure that's documented in the interim here. I'd also like to, if we have storms or something of that nature that we know is coming, then we know maybe a hazard, and close it down temporarily and make sure it passes that. I mean, it's just precautionary things, but I mean, I want to figure out a way to fix it. We're smart folks here, and I understand it costs money, but I think there's, like the chairman said about sleeving it or other items,
Well, what about another solution? If we can't do the bridge and you end up having to close the bridge, that maybe you chip seal that road for those folks there over the one going east from the bridge to the next paved road over.
Back up to 252.
Yeah. Either or, I mean, one of these roads to make it, you know, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, if you can't fix the bridge and you can't get the money, maybe you fix the road where it's a little less cumbersome for them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Mr. Hill.
Quick question, Mr. Harris. So the structure, the passing structure of the bridge is sound. It's just the pillars, the foundation is driven into the ground that we're having an issue with. Is that what they're?
Well, it
that's
isn't,
the way I'm
it
reading
isn't
this?
on the surface. The surface that you drive on, you wouldn't know that there's an issue.
That's right.
It's when you go down. This is one of those large arched culvert type bridges, and when those culverts come down together, they sit on a concrete footing.
Mhm.
And footing is cracked, and it's sinking in areas. And also where the culvert is coming down from, two different arches, they're corroded on the bottom edges of those things. So a lot of those are just, open, and some sand and other materials I've seen back then, I don't know about now, but materials had slid out of there. Some of that material had. Now, if the board wants to try to fund some interim repairs, we can. The biggest issue is the water. This last year, we were trying to get in there, I was hoping to get in there and try to take some trees out that have fallen down, but we never had a time when it was dry. I've seen it when it was dry years ago. But since then, trees have fallen in, we've got this constant rain, it's got water in it. It would have to be de-watered to do anything.
I was just gonna say, I kind of agree with the chairman too, as far as repairing those or even adding to the existing ones there for structure to hold it up, like you say, if it's falling. But again,
Want a budget?
someone like this company would have to tell us if that could be done, I guess.
Well, I think if we budget for repairs, we can let the engineers put a proposal together to see if, and then, we can communicate that to DOT and see if they will agree on the interim repairs. I don't have any reason to believe that they would reject interim repairs of that nature. We just don't have a budget to go in there and have those sections repaired on the corrugated material, and then the footings are another matter. So, you know, if you want to budget and try to do a little bit each year for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, we could try to do that.
I'd like to see if it could be sleeved.
Yeah,
Mr.
I mean, just,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the first thing you need to do is to ask the engineers, and I guess DOT, is that a possibility, and look at what that's gonna cost, you know, from the county. That'd be my first option anyway, is what I would really look at. Go ahead, Mr. Lane.
Mr. Harris, what's the traffic count on that road? You know, I mean, it's a dirt road, do you got one?
I don't know if I have an official count on that road. I know it's a very low count. I'd have to go back and look.
I mean, I would, my position is similar to Commissioner Stapleton's. I mean, I don't want us to close that bridge. I don't think that if we put this proper signage out there and as far as weight restrictions and indicate maybe some additional signage as far as the historical monument and maybe educate the public of, I don't know how you say it on the sign of, be careful, go slow. But I don't think the bridge is gonna fall in unless an overweight vehicle does it or Mother Nature does it. I don't think a passenger car is gonna make the bridge fall in myself. I think that if we can leave it open until we can determine a more cost-effective way of fixing it, over $1 million for a low traffic count, I'm in favor of exploring that avenue.
Could you use ARPA funds? It's infrastructure.
Good question for you, Mr. Harris.
I can get you an answer to that question. But apart from the sleeving, I think you'd have to start with footing, because all that is sitting on the footing. The footing is part of the problem with some of this. So we can get information on repairing the footing and then seeing if it can be sleeved in whole or in part. I think they did sections before, like on 180th.
Yeah, they did like one pipe at a time.
Yeah. So
I really wanna try to,
I think we just need to put a plan together and then bid it out and see what it's gonna cost to do it.
I wanna try to save the bridge though. I mean, the bridge is part of the history of Suwannee County, and if anyone's seen it, the way it's constructed and how it was constructed, I mean, it's definitely something. It was way ahead of its time back in this day, let's put it that way.
Well, I'm surprised it's held up as good as it really has for all this time. I mean, you just think about the corrugated pipes sitting in water and dirt, not, you wouldn't buy one today that lasts that long, I promise you.
No.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I support the habits of keeping the bridge. Let's don't close it. Give it some thought. Mr. Harris, you get with some engineers and other engineers and see what direction we can go with that. I've been over it several times and looked at it. I think you and I looked at it. One of the supervisors, and I am in favor, you know, being as historical, and that means a lot to this county, and being historical. Do whatever we can to try to keep it intact.
I think if I didn't misread it right, Commissioner Land, his support of it, he may be able to give me a little money out of his district budget to kind of help to get this thing.
Man, give him an inch, takes a mile.
Hey, it ain't gonna fix itself, I promise you that.
I was just sitting here looking, trying to remind myself whose district that was in, and now we know.
He made it very clear in this sin, it ain't mine, how about that?
I don't know if they're replacing the one on 180th Street, so.
You wasn't on the board at that time,
No.
yeah, that was pretty rough.
I guess I could back up front and say, let's just close the bridge, leave my money alone.
You go on the record as that, I'm not.
No, I've already stated my position, I'm still there.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with, I think what I'm hearing all these guys say. I mean, it's a historical bridge in Suwannee County, and we want to know what's going to take to keep it there.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go ahead and see if the engineers can put a plan together to try to, one, fix the footings, and then two, to see what can be done, either in whole or in part, on sleeving all that corrugated pipe that's in there. And then address, I mean, this is, the whole report's about 50 pages. I gave you an excerpt of it.
Yeah.
But we can take it, our engineer has a copy of it. We can go component by component and then see if we can put a plan together that we can bid without getting it done.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir, Mr. Williams?
can we look at lowering the weight restriction to as low as we possibly can to maybe limiting
We
the
did.
amount of repairs?
We
I mean,
actually
I don't
did
want
that.
semi have to go across there loaded.
But they shouldn't be on it now.
Can we reduce them to make sure, let's see if that helps us on what the repairs are required to be with a lower weight restriction allowed by DOT?
We can take
Like the
a look
passenger
at
car
that.
weight?
Or we can take a look at that. We have lowered, in fact, it's in the report here, we put it very low. I'm thinking it was 3 tons. It's got a low weight rating on it right now.
Mr. Ravat, what happens if you put a 3-ton limit weight sign there and they run across there and the bridge collapses? I'm just throwing that out there. I mean,
Well,
Who's
I mean,
responsible?
you've got the 3-ton sign up there
Yes.
already. I mean, as I understand it. But, to give it to you in legalese, whether to replace the bridge or to make repairs to the bridge is an executive decision. What you do in maintaining the bridge and what repairs that it needs moving forward is an operational decision for which the county can be liable. If a truck violates that heavier weight and everything, it would then be up to a jury of someone's peers as to whether or not the county would be liable in that result.
Yeah, the way I would see that is if that person would not be entitled to, I mean, he can sue the county, but his grounds would be not much.
well, I'm just thinking about replacement of the bridge because they'll read that sign and drive right across it, I can tell you.
Mr. Chairman, I seen something recently that was over an older bridge that when they had the weight restriction, they actually had a height thing that it was posted on, so you could, a truck wouldn't go under it without hitting the pipe. So that would stop them from doing that, yeah.
Don't bet on it.
That would deter them from doing it.
I drove under an I-10 bridge with a truck and took it out.
Yeah, some people just don't want to.
But it's just, I get their insurance, you know, but most trucks carry $1 million insurance, you know, but that's all you can get them for pretty much is $1 million. If they collapse the bridge, you're talking about $4 million to replace a bridge.
Yes, sir. I mean, their carrier, you know, if they had carrier insurance for property damage, we could recover that.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, do we know if there's that type of traffic passing this bridge, or is it just everyday local traffic?
I'm sure it's pretty much just local traffic for the most part, but
I don't have any doubt that semis go through there on occasion, but we've had it posted at 3 tons for quite some time. And that posting is noted in the DOT reports. I mean, it's well documented that we've had it posted at 3 tons. But I think, again, if we want to try to repair it, then we either let the engineers put some information together that we can actually use and bid some of these repairs. So I can bring back a task order from our engineers, let them put something together that we can bid.
well, that's just a culvert. It's just like the one on 180th Street that just goes over and fits down on some concrete.
Sits on concrete footing.
Well, I'm no engineer, but the Franklin White fix would be to get some thick steel pipe and shove through there and it'd be done. It'd hold it up. But there, I'm not an engineer.
Well, I will say this, in my conversation with Mr. Pittman, who I've been dealing with, and he contacted DOT, they were not thrilled with the interim repairs, the way that they were done on that 180th Street bridge. And I don't know if that will get approved again or not. But we've got to come up with something and get it started and turn it over to them and ask them if they will agree. So that's what I would suggest if we're gonna try to fund repairs, that we let the engineers put a design together, something that we can bid. We'd first have to take it to DOT and get them to sign off before we bid it out.
I would like to, as Mr. Harris suggests, let's move forward, try to get the engineer to get us some ideas of what needs to be done. And let's get those numbers, but I mean, if there's a way possible, I'd like to do some of that in-house. We got to do some.
The worst part of this thing is dewatering. That thing's got a pile of water in it. And, I mean, it's gonna be a massive undertaking to try to pump that thing down.
It ain't no hill for a climber, Mr. Harris. It ain't no hill for a climber.
No, and I can tell you what, I was gonna say this a minute ago. When 180th was shut down, it wasn't pleasant.
No, sir.
In fact, we went out there and shut it, it was right behind Tropical Storm Debbie. I mean, we didn't have any option. We were told we had to shut it down then. And we did, and the barricades got moved. And so we went out there and we put dirt, and they drove over the mounds of dirt on both sides. And eventually we had to get big concrete barriers and put those out there. It wasn't pleasant. In fact, it was horrible, I'll just tell you. It was not good at all.
That's one of the ones that was here during that is one of the reasons that I don't want to shut nothing down.
I remember those folks coming in here,
Yeah.
and it's just what you're saying, Mr. Harris. What, they had to drive maybe a mile and a half out of the way to go around, maybe 2 miles, something like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot to a lot of folks.
It wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
Well, and the problem with that bridge on 180th Street is, number one, a lot more traffic. Number two, you had some businesses on the other side of that bridge.
That's true.
And one of them was mine. And so we were having to transport employees all the way around that bridge every day, twice a day. And it was taking about 30 minutes, so an hour a day, on 7 or 8 people every day. So I guess we just you just need a consensus from the board on this.
Yeah, what I'll do is, if applicant, and I think I know what the board wants done, I'll get with North Florida and we'll get a task force put together on designing some interim repairs, recognizing that they're gonna have to be approved by DOT before we can do them, but
In the meantime, with the letters you're getting from DOT, you're gonna reach out to those folks also and let them know that that's what our intentions are, as far as the board.
the DOT,
Yeah.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm saying, just so they know that we've discussed a plan moving
Sure.
forward.
Just tell them I'll fix it.
Yeah. Well, I told them that we would fix it if they would remove that historic designation. We actually went, I mean, literally, I went over there and had a meeting, a big meeting with them. There were probably 10 or 12 people in the room. And I told them, I said, look, biggest problem is this designation that you have on it. They said it couldn't be lifted. I said, well, it'd be cheaper to go in there and just do a box culvert bridge and be done with this.
Sure.
But they said, yeah, we agree, but it can't be done because of the designation that's on it. So we will communicate with them. They know what we're trying to do anyway, but I'll talk to them and we'll bring something back from the engineers.
Moving along here, item number 3, discuss possible board action extending the offer date on surplus property. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that's, we opened the offers on 2 of the properties today, and those will be coming back to you in your next board meeting for your consideration. On one of the properties, just a coincidence, I suppose, but the highest offer is matched with another offer of the same price. So we need to have a tiebreaker. And my request is that you allow us to communicate to the real estate agency that we're gonna extend it for 2 weeks. Give those 2 parties an opportunity to offer, or change their offer, increase their offer, something so that we can break the tie between the 2. And then we would bring that back to you in your next board meeting as well.
So do you just need a consensus from the board on
Yes, sir.
Good.
We have a process set, so we would need a motion rather than just a consensus.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, sir.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Hale, second by Commissioner Fleming, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Additional comments and information, Mr. Harris?
Oh, yes, I do, I'm sorry. Find my notes real quick. Were you gonna do public concerns, comments first?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean, I've got some comments on a couple of projects, but I'll be glad to come back.
I'll let y'all speak. Anybody wishing to speak, please come to the podium, name and address, please. I'll figure this out one day.
I think you're doing a heck of a job.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bode.
Bo Hancock, 6135 Wiggins Road. Just a couple of things. We've extended the time and requested the time extension for the grants and everything up to 136 and 75. But one of the problems, or one of the extensions dealt with, you couldn't get, the contractor couldn't get the final inspection for the water and the sewer unless they were both operational. Have we reached that point yet?
Mr. Harris.
Repeat your question about the contractor on which one?
On both, same contractor. But they had, you said he could not get the approvals unless the water plant was functioning for the sewer plant to be checked out. So both of them had to be operational to work together.
Tori?
Okay. We had the substantial completion inspection today on the water treatment, the wastewater treatment plant. The lines connecting the two still are not fully operational, so water can't move from the water treatment plant to the wastewater plant to bring it online.
So it's not operational.
Correct.
That's
The water plant is pumping, but waiting to be able to connect all the way to the wastewater plant with the lines, the internal lines.
But the lines are there, they're just having to do testing, right?
They're in the process of testing, correct.
To get, but that has nothing to do with going south.
Down 137?
Yes.
No, those lines are in, the extension can happen, yes. The plants are complete, but not energized, I guess is the right.
Well, what I'm saying is, do you have to wait on 137 to get done, the lines that has to be on
No.
137?
No.
No, there are still a few things that need to be done on the, I know for sure.
They
on
were
the- on the-
substantially inspected today, both plants.
The plants were, but I know that, for example, there's a lift station, they poured some concrete on today, and there's some other
They're waiting,
very small
parts
components.
they're waiting on,
Yeah.
same
there's some
thing,
components
waiting
they're still
on
waiting on.
generators,
Just like everybody else.
correct.
So does that put the contractor then beyond the last 30-day extension of time? And the same with the grant, because you went back and you got the extension on November 15th,
For music,
on the grant first.
oh, I can't speak.
I think we're gonna be okay on our
And-
extensions. I talked to Shannon, where is Shannon? I saw him earlier. We talked about several extensions yesterday on a number of different things, so are we still good on our timeline for the grants, or for the funding? You were closing some of them out.
Yeah, one of the grants for the water plant construction will be closing out because it's expended. The sewer plant grants, we should be fine. There is one grant on the water plant. There is a federal or state date where things have to be encumbered that I do not think can be moved, and that's June the 30th. So I don't think that's a movable date. But I can go back and review that. I believe we have to have expenses encumbered by that date, not necessarily paid out, but based on the timing that I've seen for extensions, the work should be done prior to, for the plant itself, should be completed, March is what I think the time is. So that puts us several months before that June 30th date. So I think we should be okay unless there's some other event or something that triggers another extension for the water plant itself. We should be fine.
Yeah, I think it's the state revolving fund that's closing out.
Yes, sir, it is.
And I believe the extension or for the time for date, what is it? The bids are due for the extension going to run down 137 on the 18th, I believe,
14th.
14th.
They open on the 18th, but they're due on the 14th.
Well, okay, thank you. I just used the wrong verbiage.
We just had the same conversation here today with contractors.
We had a pre-bid this morning.
Okay. So at least we're making progress, hopefully. Got a date yet for your, on the wage?
I just received information from Mr. Gentry, and we're going to be going through that and have some conversation on what additional information we may have to put together in order to get it to the commissioners. So we don't have a date for that workshop yet.
30 days, maybe?
I don't know. I don't have any idea, but you'll know when we all know. We have quite a bit of information that Mr. Gentry put together on a couple of different scenarios that had to be run. There may need to be some more, because we want to try to provide quite a bit of information to the commissioners so that we can have a good conversation when we get to the workshop.
Well, when we do that workshop, are we gonna try to include the whole garbage waste thing in that same workshop? I mean,
That would be nice if it's available. The one thing right now that is preventing us from getting the balance of the information we need on the question of a landfill is information that we're waiting on from the city of Live Oak. And I've spoken to the city administrator about that. Our engineers put together a list of information that's associated with leachate and disposal of leachate. And I had taken it to the city, spoke to them about it. They forwarded it to their engineers to see if they can handle that volume. Because in the initial years of a landfill, you've got quite a bit of leachate that's being produced because there's so much exposure to rainwater. And it's wide open. Once you start to get your slopes built up and you can cover, you can separate some of that. So the first few years have a very high volume. They're trying to determine whether or not they can handle that additional volume, because that's where we take our leachate now, treatment. So when we get that information back, it goes to our engineer, Mr. Locklear, and then he can finish his modeling. And if they have that completed, by the same time, we could do the workshop on that as well.
Mr.
All
Chairman.
day up here.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Lane,
Mr. Harris, is there any opportunity for us to take those leach agents to our facility out at 136?
No, sir, they wouldn't handle that volume.
Okay, one other thing. The railroad crossing at 175th, is that done now?
I just got an email on that, it's finished. Now, we still have, I think, a little bit of striping to do on US 90. But otherwise, the crossing was just completed. They came in here, worked on it, sent me an email and said that they were finished on the 30th, that it's functional now. So it's now
Open,
essentially completed.
but it is open and travelable now with guards.
Well, we may have to remove the barricades, but what we need to do is get the striping finished on US 90. Because it would have to be barricaded. They have to send a flagman out when we do that. They made that clear in their email as well, even though it's on US 90.
Hey. Well, shucks. I done run out of things to ask you.
thank you, Mr. Hancock. Anybody else wishing to speak? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry?
Name and address for the record.
My name is Jeffrey Turner. My address is 13528 142nd Place. And the question I have is, as I was doing my due diligence, going through my tax form here, I saw an item that I didn't know what it was, called fine and forfeiture fund. And when I looked up that particular thing in the Florida statutes, it said that it's a fund to fund the courthouses and such like that. And anything that's left over goes into the general fund. And it's also said that the maximum that the council in the state of Florida, any county commission was allowed to charge was $2 million. And on here, I'm being actually charged $4.5 million. And I was just kind of wondering what the discrepancy is and why is that like that?
Mr. Provine, I'll let you answer that one.
Thank you, sir. What you're referring to is probably statute 142.02.
It is.
It is actually a supplementary tax statute to be able to charge an additional 2.0 mils if need be. The original fine and forfeiture fund that you see on your tax bill is actually one of the 6 original areas of budgeting that you're allowed to be able to do. Some time ago, the county decided under, I think it's 129.05, don't quote me on that one, but no, it's 129.011, that you can consolidate certain avenues of your budget and just call it a general fund. What they did not do was put fine and forfeiture in there. It's one of the original 6. Fine and forfeiture fund under the statute and the Constitution allows you to fund all of the law enforcement operations of the county out of that particular fund. And this county has chosen for a number of years just to keep that part, separate. But what you're concerned about in that particular statute has no application here.
So the max of 2.0 by Florida statute means nothing? Is that that's what you just said, right?
No, the particular statute for the supplemental tax.
So
You
is
can't
this
go any more on that supplement than.
So is this the
2.0.
supplemental tax that we're talking about right now?
No, sir.
2.0?
No, sir, this is the same regular constitutional statutes.
Okay.
You've just misunderstood.
Well,
It's a nomenclature issue.
I was just going by what I read.
Yeah.
And when I put it in, that's what came up. And it didn't show me anything else because all I was trying to do was find out what that particular thing was.
Yes, sir.
And then it said when it was max 2.0, I'm like, something's not right. And so I had to find out what it was.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate you taking the time to tell me. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Provine, anything else?
Not for me this evening.
Mr. Harrison, I'll come back to you.
Yes, sir. I do have a couple of items. Mr. Hancock beat me to one of them. One of them was to report on 175th. But one exciting thing I want to share with you was interesting to me. I was kind of shocked. I got an email and then a phone call from an engineer with DOT today. And they are interested in being a customer of our water and sewer utilities up there in the northeast part of the county for the rest areas that are on the interstate. So I told them that we could very possibly be interested, but they'd have to run their calculations on quantities and get those to us. So I'll bring information back to you. It'd be nice to have customers hooked to this facility. But in any event, I'll bring that back to you as they give those to me. I think he said they're at least a year out on, I believe, permitting whatever it is that they're doing. So he's going to work on getting the information to us, and I'll bring it back to you when I receive it. And I've spoken to Tori about us running that against our calculations on our facilities, make sure that they're capable.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Statement.
Since you're bringing that up, Mr. Harris, and about adding additional, and then also he's talking about, doing 137 and going that way. Is it time now? I guess maybe you'll know after we get the calculations from the state and also with what we're doing there. My question is, if we're 60-70% capacity on our sewer plant at that point, I mean, is it time for us to start trying to plan for the future and figuring out if we need about expanding that plant? And I take it we are in position that we're capable of being able to do that when the time comes. I'm just saying, I want to have a conversation. I'm not saying we have to do it right now. I just want us to be out in front of it. Because I realize these things take years. Take years to number one, to design, and number two, to fund. So if there's something that we need to do as a board, planning far out, and start setting money aside, incrementally to compensate when that time comes. That's all I'm saying.
You're talking about capacity.
Yes, I'm talking about if
We're getting close to capacity with what we've got going on already out there. We need to be looking at expanding the sewer plant.
That's correct. And I know it's years out, but I'm saying.
Yeah, it took, what, 3 years to get it started with?
Oh, no, it took a lot longer than that.
So.
Yeah, this actually, believe it or not, started with a conversation with White Springs. I mean, they wanted to run their utilities, and it took a long time to find out why, but I finally just asked them the question in a very frank way, and they said it was because they wanted us to share ad valorem tax revenue with them and that interchange. And the commissioners at the time said, we're not doing that. So we had participated in lots of meetings with them. This goes way back. I mean, this goes back probably 8 years, I'm guessing, at least.
I also went on and had a meeting with myself.
Yeah. I mean, all the commissioners at the time had gone to meetings up there. We had a big meeting in the farmer's market, so it goes way back. But we didn't have any money. So we started looking and kept looking and finally had an opportunity. Governor Rick Scott was real big on helping these smaller counties become self-sufficient by helping us with infrastructure. So an opportunity came one year during the holidays, and I sat in the office and did a lot of paperwork, and we finally got it approved. So it's been many years coming. And even then, we had to go back and get additional funding through that state revolving fund because we were $300,000 shy of what we needed. And I think it took $1 million to cover the $300,000 because when we went and got wasn't $1 million? In order to comply with all of the requirements, in order to get the $300,000, it ran the cost up to.
It's like 500, that we needed like 600,000 or 700,000, and we ended up at like 1.1 or 1.2.
Yeah, it was a big difference. But that was because that money came with conditions. So it's been an interesting journey, but your point is well taken. Yes, that facility is expandable. We did some things with the design on the water plant because of our low volume of usage and not wanting water to sit there and go bad on you. So, and we've got plenty of room out there, as you know, especially around the water plant. So yeah, as soon as we get, that's why I wanted the numbers. We're gonna run the numbers, compare them to what we're permitted for. The big question then becomes one of what can we get a permit for in water consumption? So we'll run all of that, do the comparisons to reconcile, and then bring that back to you.
Yeah, I want to be proactive in it. And like I said, it's years in the planning ahead, and I don't, when it takes off, it's going to take off, and I don't want someone to come to us and say.
Being there's an existing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if there's already an existing sewer plant there, and you just want to expand on it, does it take near as long to get permits to do what you want to do?
Or just a plant expansion?
Plant expansion should not, no. I mean, but It's the funding side of it.
To secure
It's
the funding for that.
Funding side
Yeah.
of it. The plant's only for 50,000.
Well, Mr. Harrison's gonna want us some money, so.
Sounds good.
I tell you what, it really has been a journey. I could write a book on what it's taken to get the money for that.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lane?
after we, I mean, we're at, I don't remember what the number was, but Mr. Stapleton, I think I'm on the same line as him. I mean, if we were to take, once the thing comes, I mean, it's not even online yet, and we're at what capacity?
No, I was just throwing a number out.
No, he just threw a number out. That,
So, here's my question, is after it's permitted online and working, and then truly comes online, I forget what we dedicate to them? Was there a number on that, on the usage or the volume? Was there a number on that?
I think there is a number, I don't remember now what it
So,
was.
if we add that to it, and then this rest area, I have no idea what kind of volume they generate. I mean, we're gonna be knocking on 90%, I would guess, 80 to 90% capacity on a plant that's a year old, year and a half old, so.
It may be a good opportunity to get a disproportionately higher contribution from the state, because if they had to build their own facilities for those rest areas, it might cost them more than contributing to the expansion of ours. So once we get their numbers, we'll look at that.
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest, to say, hey, state, and we can help you out, maybe take it, but we're gonna need some funding to, you're taking up unforeseen capacity that we never anticipated you guys asking us to take your wastewater from the rest area, and we kinda had a 5-8 year plan there, and now you're gonna shorten that down to 2 if we do this. So can you help us out with some revenue to make up for that loss of capacity that our taxpayers are gonna benefit from on future development of that interchange? And you shorten the lifespan of our plant, what can you do to help us if we take that?
That's gonna be the conversation. Once we know what the quantities are, we can reconcile them in our daily capacity.
Well, while we're on the sewer plant thing, we've got a water plant out here where the sawmill is, but we don't have no sewer plant. I think that ought to be like a top issue as well.
I've been begging for it.
Historically, there were 3 primary locations that the previous boards have discussed. One was a sewer plant out there at the catalyst site, somewhere in that vicinity. The other was north 129, somewhere up there, because the music park's been talking to us about it forever. They'd like to see us have a facility. In fact, Mr. Bravatt and I looked at lands, several properties for that a number of years ago, and we just couldn't find a property that was conducive to that. And the other was out there at I-75 and 136. So it's possible that we could start looking at, the reason that there isn't a sewer plant out there at the catalyst site right now, and there is a water plant, was because when the numbers were run on the volume at that time, that the original sawmill owners were projecting, the volumes weren't there to justify the construction of a sewer plant. Since then, they've run into some issues that they're trying to mitigate. The new owners are trying to mitigate. And we've been talking to some people about some other things out there at the catalyst site, and if that occurs, it might be an opportunity if we get, the volumes up to where need be, then we could apply for some grants, see if I can get some more funding and expanding the sewer facility out there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question for you on that. So, if it comes to like federal government grant dollars, do we need a design in place to allow you to chase that better? I mean, if we said we wanted to put a plan out there, should we go ahead and engineer or have something going? Even though we're not spending that money, we're figuring this is what we want to do. And
At the very least, you need an estimate. You need to have an idea of how much money you're gonna need. Do you have to have the thing fully designed? No. But you need to have an idea of how much money you're gonna ask for. And one thing that you have to do is close out some of these grants. I mean, one problem I ran into at the catalyst site, And I think we've probably spent $20 million at the catalyst site. And I think 2/3 of that came from grant funds. And it took a long time, because one thing I ran into, I was asking for every grant that fell out of the heavens and made a lot of trips to Tallahassee. But one thing we ran into was that you have to, for example, depending on the type of CDBG grant that you have, that you've been awarded, you may have to close that one out before you can go back and apply for another one, an economic development grant. So it took a long time, because I had to, CDBG takes a long time to be awarded. You might spend a year or 18 months trying to get an award on a grant. And then you start your design, and then you go to bid and construction, so maybe you've got 3 or 4 years involved in this thing. But you've already got something else that you want to build and you need the funding. You can't go apply for another economic development CDBG grant until you close out the one that's already active. So I had a lot of that throughout the years with the catalyst site, trying to get grants closed out so that I could go right back and reapply for another one from the same entity to continue a different portion of the improvements that were necessary out there at the catalyst site.
I think what he's telling us is he can do it twice as fast now as he did the first time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, that's what I'm saying.
Well, is infrastructure grants the same as the CDBG grants? I mean, is there
Yes.
different kinds, or?
There are different types. I mean, there are some for housing, and you can't use the housing grants for your infrastructure, but fortunately, they've got lots of different ones, and you apply for the ones that you need at the time, and most of ours are gonna be infrastructure. Now, there were some other funds at the time that were much easier to obtain. I had lots of different grants that I worked on. In fact, DOT had me speak to all of the counties a couple of years ago about how to maximize the use of grants, bundling a lot of them together, and they allowed me to do that. But there were rural infrastructure fund grants at one time, and economic development, transportation funds, and lots of other things that the state had come up with. And there's been quite a challenge to some of the funding through the legislature on some of those sources since Governor Scott left and went to Congress. But when those types of opportunities exist and they're funded adequately through the legislature, then we have plenty of opportunity to go back for some of those funds. In fact, I used to drive up there and I'd talk to them and ask them, I need some more funding from the rural infrastructure fund, and they'd say, how much? And I'd tell them everything that you have left. And honestly, they gave me everything they had left on more than one occasion. So I was just honest with them and told them. And it's just like the state revolving fund, the water funding that we had to have, the 1.1 million. They asked how we were gonna pay it back in a conference call. And I said, we aren't. We need for you to gift this money to us. And they said, okay. I mean, it wasn't that simple, but they did agree to forgive it and not make us pay it back.
I think when we have that workshop on the wages, that we need to set aside some time to talk about the sewer or the treatment facility out there, the capacity, and also maybe strategize a little bit on this other out here at the park. I mean, spend some time when we're together, and by that time, we could probably have some more information that you're working on as far as from DOT with what they're thinking, and it just gives us.
I think it's gonna be a pretty long workshop, and there's a bunch to do.
And that's fine. I mean, it may take 3 or 4 days.
I think too that it might be possible, I don't know, but we had a workshop with the city at one time and asked them to consider allowing us to be a wholesale customer of water and sewer. I still think if we could do something with the city, it would be advantageous, and we could run that straight up 129 and take care of the music part. I just don't know what their capacities are. That Commissioner Fleming was there at the time. I don't remember if anyone else participated in that, but we had a long workshop with them, and it just did not produce anything at the end of the day. But that would still be worth pursuing if we've got anyone over there interested in working with us on that.
Mr. Chairman, couple questions. Number one is, prior to the workshop, can you guys study what our potential uses are on the ARP money? I mean, it's infrastructure. Do we absolutely have to have grants, or is there, I mean, if the board agrees to use some of our ARP money to expand that water treatment plant,
We can do that. That's an approved use of the funding, the ARPA funding is.
And my other thoughts are, as far as, you know, do I think we need to address the sewer problem out of the catalyst side? Absolutely. Do I want to see our brand-new plant go to max capacity without plans of expanding it? I'd rather focus on expanding that first to make sure that we don't miss out on any potential new stuff. I mean, for me, that level of priority would be to make sure that that plant doesn't meet max capacity. That would be number one for me. And then number two, address anything new, so to speak, whether it be catalyst side or 129 North. I mean, I think 129 North, the conversation with the city is very valid to say, hey, city, if we help you out, do you want to expand your city limits with some help from us? I mean, we got to learn to work better with the city. City needs to learn to work better with us. The community's going to benefit tremendously if we can get some cooperation there. Those are my thoughts. And then, we got some surplus money coming. There's not a lot from these sale of these properties. I hope that I know we are on 112th, but all these other ones that were surplus, and hopefully we can stack all those revenues from those sales in a particular line item to reinvest in county assets as far as, capital improvement projects, whether it be land acquisitions, or, expanding that infrastructure that will generate revenue for the county. Those are just my thoughts on priority.
The infrastructure is your most critical component of economic development, because a lot of big companies want water and sewer and fire flow. And if you can't provide that, then it makes it difficult for you to compete with other counties that can. So I think that's a good plan, is for us to pursue that first.
Well, we just gotta learn from our mistakes. And not so much mistakes, just from not knowing things. We're 25 years behind on 136 interchange. I mean, that's been closed since I was a young boy, basically. And if it would have water and sewer, it'd be wider. It'd look like 129. So we're behind. We're way behind, and we gotta plan ahead. We gotta plan ahead. We gotta make excellent decisions for the future of when all of us aren't here. You got to leave the people that's coming in set up to be successful. That's part of this job that's very important. And I think we all realize that. We're learning that. And we're trying to get there, but it's a tough road. I mean, it is, but it's all about dollars. And when you don't have them, it's hard to do anything. But planning and saving, just like you're saying, putting that money to good use and planning where it can go and what it can do to get the most for the people of Suwannee County, that's what it's about.
Agreed. Anything else on that?
No, sir. I'll bring all of that back.
Mr. Fleming,
Mr. Chairman, I think
closing comments?
Chief, you want to come before I say anything?
No, I was just standing up.
Oh. I promise I won't be long. I'm just glad to see everybody back. And we started on a good note, talking about a lot of things. It's kind of limited in some things that are concerning the water sewer issue. I've been there, done it, know what it's like, know what we've been doing, and trying to work with the city and the disappointments with the city. But I know all things are possible. And I don't have a problem giving it another shot at trying to work with those guys, but it's disappointing when you get to the back of the road and the door is closed on you. It haven't been good. But again, I want to be able glad to be back here and looking forward for a very, very prosperous year. Things that's in the making, and I hope that they come into play. And anything that to help this county, that's what I'm all about. I'm very passionate. That's Commissioner Stapleton's word. I'm very passionate about this county. Born and raised here, 5th generation here. I love it here. Got children here. Got children in other counties, other states. I got grandbabies, and I hope they stay here. So we need jobs and whatever it takes to make things happen here. That's what I'm all about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Stapleton.
Oh, sorry, just a second, I got it.
Mr. Lane?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had some positive, talks and direction, and we know there's a tough decision ahead of us. I think I know what Commissioner Staples is thinking, and I'm gonna save it for him. But, we got some major loss in our community today, this afternoon. While we've been sitting up here. My heart breaks for that family tremendously. That's more important than anything we talked about here tonight is life. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Just echo, I think what both commissioners said. I'm glad to see us starting off this 2022 year, first meeting, future planning. Trying to get ahead of it and forward thinking. We need to do it. It's unfortunate we're competing with many other counties that are thinking the same way we are, and we gotta go to battle for them and fight for our own, but I agree that there's a lot of things that we take for granted, life being one of them. And I just pray that we never forget that, guys. We really don't need to. And on a lighter note, I'll say this, Mr. Harris, you mentioned, I think that was the first DOT meeting I went to that you spoke to about attaining grants and putting it together, this and another, and DOT must have paid attention because the next year they come in, they cut our road projects down and everything else. I almost wish you wouldn't have spoke that day, but anyhow. But that's all I got, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Hale. We can go ahead and use P last.
No, I'm fine, I can go now, I was just wanting to just text on somebody here. I don't even know what to say or how to say it other than at 5:47 this afternoon, we lost one of our own. And I don't even have words. It's just how short life is. And I'm heartbroken.
I am as well, and it's heartbreaking, it's sad, and I feel for the family. And I wish them Godspeed.
I think Commissioner Land was leaning toward a little bit, and I thought about it more after he talked a little bit about Patrick, and there's so many people, inspectors in this world. They come there to do a job. And they want to cause a problem or a roadblock. And then you got one such as him that comes. He's not interested in finding a problem, he's interested in finding a solution.
It's true.
My heart breaks for his family. we've said it so many times on this board since I've been here, the amount of life lost. Got to realize tomorrow's never promised. We can all do better. It's all got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I echo the same thing, and he was a real good inspector, and he never created a roadblock for me, and he was always helpful to try to show me something that needed to be done instead of telling me it couldn't be done. And so my heart goes out to the family, and I just need a motion to adjourn.
All for motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Stapleton, second by Commissioner Lynn, all in favor?
Aye.